I was sharing with Tim earlier. I don't know why we decided to do this as the last meeting of the day, so late in the day. So I really, truly appreciate you spending an hour with us. We'll be talking about hiring mistakes that companies make, even smart companies with really smart processes, with maybe even AI. We'll touch on AI. It's a hot topic. And we'll talk about how to avoid those hiring mistakes. This webinar is actually one in a series. We have three planned, including this one. So as Tim said, we'll have a little teaser. A little bit about myself. I'm Tatiana St. Germain with Great People Management. I am an executive coach and talent advisor to companies who really appreciate people and believe, like I do, that people are the foundation of every business and they want to continuously improve and grow their talent and improve their systems and processes. And today I'm honored to be joined by Tim Lesnick, my friend, uh, talent strategy and recruiting leader, HR thought leader extraordinaire. And how this all came together is we were at an event and we were talking about trends, hiring trends, AI impact on hiring trends, hiring mistakes, assessments, and all of that. And we thought, gosh, wouldn't it be wonderful to do this in this type of forum and record it and use this to post, get that message out there. Tim, you want to say a few words? Introduce yourself better than I am introducing you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm glad that we put it together. I would say this is the first of three. So if you watched the recording and couldn't make it, do a better job of getting the next couple out. As Tatiana said, we've known each other for some time and figured there were great synergies between what she and her firm does and what I do and my firm does. And I'm messing up my tenses there because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I've been running with scissors for a week. So this is my busy time of year. It's like tax season in my business. If I was to make an analogy, I place people in positions for money, which is fun. I also do that for free quite a bit too. So just spent half my life, 24 years I'm at now. So you can guess my age if math is even remotely in your wheelhouse. And during that time, I've placed over 4,000 people for a fee. I kept track of this over a long period of time. I gave up when I got in the high threes. And what I said and figured out was that you don't usually have people like me at the on the front lines in the trenches. So I am every day involved with helping hire, consult, recruit, expand their plan, interviewing advice, looking at resumes, and I'm somewhere in the 80,000 hour range of doing that. And so, well, look, they say you're a subject matter expert if you spend 5 years and 10,000 hours doing something. And you can figure that out too, how many hours a week I probably do this. I'm just a headhunter, recruiter, and hiring consultant literally pretty much every day of my life since I signed up. It's become part of who I am. I don't know that I have an identity without it, but that's a debate for another day. So, look, these are opinions, and hopefully, you feel good advice from both Tatiana and I with having years of experience in an industry and what we've seen evolve.
Yeah, and like I said before, we're in a small group of friends here, so I think we will have a robust discussion. Richard just joined. Hi, Richard. So today, the plan, at least the
Hello.
plan is, at least the plan is to talk about what is the cost of hiring mistakes because we know we all make them. And if you've ever hired people, you know what it means to you. If you ever screwed up and hired a good one, you also know what it means to you. So we'll talk about some interesting statistics. My team collects those statistics every year and we'll look at trends and any changes. I find it pretty fascinating to look at numbers. Then we will list some of the biggest hiring mistakes that companies make. And even the companies, as I mentioned before, the ones that have a great process, they still make those mistakes because we're all human. It's a very human decision. And then we'll talk about what actually predicts performance. So, how to combat those hiring mistakes and talk about a better way to hire through job fit. So, hiring mistakes. Um, Tim, you probably have lots of war stories on hiring mistakes. How are these statistics looking to you? Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I like where when a client hires by themselves, so the first one there, 74% admit to hiring the wrong candidate. I think you can go a lot into what they do about it. The cool part about doing what I do when I find companies do this, they tend to then go introspective more often than not. Like maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we didn't interview right. Maybe we need more training. Maybe they'll catch on, right? And there's that waste and cost goes on. And I think people think too much of it as a DIY strategy when they're hiring, when they should really think of it as an investment. And, whether you're investing in a vehicle, a home, some sort of financial product, one at a time, you probably put a lot more due diligence than you think into your buying strategy. It's just weird that I don't think people think that they're actually buying people when they hire them. And that's actually what you're doing. And I think they throw some of the babies out with the bathwater. Horrible analogy because I don't, that's very old analogy and I don't even know exactly where it came from. So I'm gonna have to chat GPT that one later. But I also say there's a exponential effect here, right? Where you see the 80% of employee turnover is related to bad hiring decisions. That stat, um, I think takes into account probably the fact that you're in a company, you're not feeling so great about it, and they hire some bad people, especially at a leadership level or whatever, and then people quit and
Yeah.
you either get quiet quitting, which is even more costly, they say. That's called presenteeism. And
Mhm.
then, or you get people that are actually physically quitting and you've kind of damaged your culture. So, I think that last one's awesome too. It's, you're talking 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
And that's the 80/20 rule showing up again there, right?
Mhm.
80% of the work's done by 20% of the people. 80% of the sales comes from 20% of your best salespeople. And most of your work's getting done 80% of it by 20%. So I think that's where that 19% is very closely aligned, where the data you guys pulled shows that really 20% of the time you're successful at it, which is not a good success rate.
And this is where we can come in to help improve that statistic. But you made such an important point that you're buying a person when or you can also consider it to be like a marriage proposal. You really have to do your due diligence. And companies, even when they have a decent screening process, they're not using the right tools. They're not screening for the right things. And this is why we want to talk about it, those hiring mistakes. Most hiring decisions focus on what's easier to see, what they see on the resume, skills, experience, how they perform in the interview, and if they can sell themselves. But what's missing, I find in my line of work, is what actually drives success, how a person thinks, how they react to change, adversity, how they work through challenging situations, how do they stay engaged. All of that is going to show up later, always does. And in terms of how it shows up, the cost of hiring mistakes. Tim, you and I discussed the $17,000 on average cost being pretty low, and I think anybody who sees this would agree. But this is a newer statistic that we pulled. I've been using this second one. Bad hire can cost your business 30% or more of employees' first year salary, and that's from the Department of Labor. And I've used this for years, and I think it's ringing true for most people. But even when I present this, they say, it's usually a lot more because there's direct cost of hiring the wrong person or cost of turnover, and then there's indirect costs where it can impact performance of other members, how much time it's going to take of the leader, of the manager to manage that poor performance or to deal with the results of that turnover or the results of the bad hire. Think of how much you pay managers per hour. Multiply that by how much time is taken away from productivity. So, and that's one of those statistics. 34% of CFOs said that not only do bad hires cost them productivity, but managers also have to spend 17% of their time supervising poorly performing employees. Does all of this resonate with you guys? Everybody on the call? Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm taking notes here. Everything that you're saying sounds very impactful.
Thank you. Tim, did you have anything else to add to
Yeah, a few
cost?
quick things. Yeah, well, one, I would say, people may or may not know this. Career Builder used to be the crown jewel 2 decades ago. And I'm sorry if Career Builder people hear this, but the reality of it is they don't. There's so much more competition now. Monster was the biggest and the best back in the day, right? And then, LinkedIn obviously came around. You have Indeed, you have so many other sites. In general, I would say the average salary of a Career Builder user and hire is in that 50 to $60,000 a year level. And that's really where that 17 comes from, right? And like you said, I like using the 30% because on ladders, those are jobs that are all 100K and above. And so you think that the average loss is a third of their annual salary, right? And then you can kind of deduct back if you hire a lot of people that are hourly or lower dollar amount, maybe the dollar amount is more, but the percentage is what we pay attention to. Found that to be accurate a lot. I use that in my sales strategy as a headhunter, saying, look, if the job's been open for 2 or 3 months, let's call it three, or you had a bad hire, my average fee is between 20 and 25%, given the circumstance. 22 is what it normally is. That's less.
Mhm.
If a job's been open for 3 months and no one's been doing the work, I'm like, well, you technically, by not paying that payroll, have already paid my fee. Not to make a sales strategy here, but I often get an objection where people are like, I'll just do it myself. It's a very DIY related business. And I have a line. I've spent half my life doing it, and I'm going to say this in retirement when I write books, which is going to be one of them is going to be you're the worst person to hire for yourself. I am for me. I'm not good at hiring for me, and I've collected a fee on something that's supposed to be free 4,000 times. And then we already touched on the other one, right? Which is this becomes exponential, which is
Right.
the bad hires then affect other things. And then the one I really like in there is reminds me of an old Sprint story. I'm going to share real quick where Sprint had an issue where they noticed that 80% of their calls were coming from a small group of people, a small group of customers. And they figured out that they could save tons of money just by firing those customers. This was about 20 years ago. And so they had the repeat offenders calling in customer service. They actually fired their clients because they were responsible for
Mm.
80%. And they were able to then shrink the size of their call center, reduce the fees for everybody else. And, you know, anyway, that's a side hustle. So
I,
you got to look at the other intangibles that are affected by it's not just the thing. There are several other things down the line that come from it. Team synergy, culture, managers, and then that manager's boss being like, what's going on? And then they're spending an extra 5 hours a week in meetings. That 17% might be low in your
Mhm.
company, right? It's an average. What is your company doing? Do you even measure those metrics, by the way?
Mm.
You should. What is a real bad hire costing you? And do you have all those variables and intangibles sorted out?
Yeah. Jennifer,
I
you
have
had
a I
something?
have a question, if I could chime in here, since this is a friendly group.
Yes.
Um, Tim, I hear you say that phrase a lot, and I'm hoping you can I know what you mean. After several times of hearing it, I'm like, what is he saying? And I know what you mean, but so when you say you're the worst person to hire for your own position, or you,
Yeah. Yeah, I'll elaborate on that.
The-
What I mean by that is it's hiring is in reverse, and Tatiana is going to give us some things that will at the end of this that will placate to some of that. So we're setting up a little of the problem, and I'm not going to give that away because that's part of it. But this is really the essence of it. Is the only real way to evaluate job performance is job performance, and the best way to evaluate and check job performance is to figure out if you have a job fit. And interviews and resumes are lackluster in that process. But I start even before that, and it's very simple premise that it's you're not objective when you're doing it for you. You have some emotional involvement, you have things you think, you're also in a power dynamic. I know what I can pay. I get to ask all the questions. I'm in charge of the conversation, and the other person's in a position where they've got to answer this. They also can research me. Like if we start talking about golf and fun stuff, I might forget to ask you the 10 interview questions. You guys know me. I'm a friendly guy. We start talking. I'm just gonna be like, I like you. The first thing you're doing when you buy something, buy a person. I know it sounds crazy to say that, and it doesn't always have the best thing, but that's when hiring decisions are made. That's what you're doing. You're actually doing it with emotional and visceral response more so than you are logic response because you're not using enough tools and enough data and enough detail. So you're in a bad position. You've also led the witness, like in a court of law. If everyone in that goes into a jury, the first thing they ask them is to make sure they know nothing about the case. If you know something about the case, you have confirmation bias, you have preconceived notions, you look at the defendant, he looks guilty, your eyes deceive us, so you have all these things before it. So the advantage headhunters have, or third party service providers of any kind, I'm not emotionally involved in your company, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not actually hiring the person. You are. So when I interview you, let's say Jennifer, I interview you, I get to interview you about your life. I can ask you questions. I can get you to share information because you might hold some things back because you're like, oh, I don't know Tim well enough. He might not hire me. So I'm going to hold some of these weird things back or whatever. Like I tell people, like, hey, I don't hire any. I sometimes do different things, and I won't take this off track, but like, hey, I don't hire anyone that's never been fired in sales. And
You
people
don't
will be like
hire
this,
anyone that's ever been fired.
never been fired in sales. I just say stuff like that. It's not necessarily true. That's not true. But I'll say that in an interview to get
Mhm.
them to tell me that I've been fired before. Really? Where? Let's talk about it. Right? How do you
Mhm.
get to the truth? And then I'll also ask them a question that's nonsensical to see how they think. And then whatever they give me in their answer, I always ask them another question. People have scripts. This is the problem with this.
Mm.
Being very precise with every single thing you're going to do, like that last slide said 45% of this is about process, lack of process. You must know when, like the golden child, you must know when to break the rules. You should have a set of criteria, but it needs to be fluid and flexible. And you have to be spontaneous because people and behavior is spontaneous. You can't measure thinking with a script and preconceived notions. You need to break them out of whatever they're doing to try to find out what makes them there because everything you're hiring for is not on the job description and it's not on the resume. 80% of the things you're hiring them for has nothing to do with either of them, and you can't even articulate either of
Mm.
Exactly. And it's going to show up later. But the reason that I needed to find this slide. I don't have this slide in the presentation. Common hiring mistakes. What you were talking about is hiring in your own image. That's another way of saying what you were saying, and Jennifer, what you were asking about. It's because you like yourself, or it's especially a problem for leaders, very successful leaders, leaders of small companies, family-owned businesses. They want to find a replacement for themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what, if I could just chime in, that's the phrase. So when you say that, Tim, you're the worst person to hire for yourself. That implies that someone's interviewing for their own position, which doesn't
Oh, your
happen a
own
lot.
team. I meant your own team.
Your
Sorry.
own team. Okay,
Yeah.
that's always that
I,
makes me confused
I
is
even say that for an HR person hiring for someone else's team in their company, it's a little bit better, but it's not a whole lot better because they've had to advertise the job. But it also just depends on how they come in. But this is awesome. They're relying on the interview and the resume. And Jennifer, we're going to come back to that at the end. So I want to pin cushion that because I know I haven't fully answered it yet, but I think some of the other things Tatiana and I are going to come through. We'll come through it already. But it's a great question. What I meant is when you're
Got it.
hiring and people know you're hiring for your company or your team and you're involved in the process in some process, you should have no bearing in the company at all. Anyway, there's a couple of
Yeah,
other
that's
things
a
I can
better way
talk
to
about
say it.
there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So some part of what we're discussing is biases that get in the way. One of them is hiring in your own image. That's one of the biggest hiring mistakes leaders make, hiring managers make. 48% of HR managers admit that bias affects hiring decisions too. I don't think it's surprising. We had a good, oops, oh, no, go back. So bias, 99% of the interview, and there's different statistics on this confirmation bias in particular, but there's quite a few studies. I guess depends on who does the study with whom. But what the consensus is that the decision to hire or not to hire is made in the first anywhere from 10 seconds to first 10 minutes of the interview, and then the rest of the time is spent in confirmation bias, confirming that decision. And there's nothing beyond that decision. There's nothing a candidate can do to change that outcome. It's because everything they say is going to either confirm how great they are, the horns and halo effect. That's another type of other bias to we can use, or they can't say anything right to fix the situation if there is some kind of personal dislike due to biases. Some of the biases could be tribalism is another bias that I like to talk about because we're social animals, right? So back in the Stone Age, what did we need to make sure that we had? We needed to belong to a group of people. And if you didn't belong to a group of people, what happened? The other tribe would kill you. You'd starve. And we are descendants of those who didn't starve and didn't die. So you have to make sure that you belong to that tribe. In addition to wanting to be a member of one tribe, you need to be properly hostile to the member of another tribe. And so that
Interesting.
tribalism really comes through with both interviewers and candidates, and just in life in general when we communicate. Notice how that can impact our communication and our opinions, initial biased first impression opinions about somebody. So I find that to be really interesting. I think let me see if I have this study because
Yeah.
I articulate
While you're
this.
looking, I was going to chime in just while you're looking that up, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
And I'll be quick. This one, I love this. I loved your stats on this one. And that's kind of a little where I gave a precursor before that. The thing is 93% of, communication is nonverbal, right? So examples of this, I've heard clients literally say this. I decided in the first 2 minutes that I was going to hire this person. This is where building rapport has been coached to people before. Hey, it's important to try to connect early so that you can try to sway confirmation bias. And that may be a strategy, but it doesn't necessarily help you get where you need to go. So you have to placate and plan for that too, right? So just something to throw out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I will need to move along a little bit through the other hiring mistakes, but I do want to mention that study. It was done by University of Toledo, and just in 3 sentences, the results reported that judgments made in the first 10 seconds of an interview predicted the outcome of the interview. They videotaped interviews and then showed thinner and thinner slices of those interviews to participants, like focus group observers. And they tested several variables and found that observers and interviewers made the same assessments even without meeting candidates, even when shown a clip as short as 10 seconds, even with the sound turned off. So going back to your comment about nonverbals, absolutely plays into all of that. So anyway, I think we've established that one of the main mistakes is allowing the bias into the process. right? And also relying just on the interview, because incidentally, interview alone only gives you a 14% chance of hiring a top performer. 14% chance. That's it. No matter how skilled you are at interviewing.
Can you
Statistics.
repeat that, Tatiana?
Relying only on the interview gives you a 14% chance of hiring a top performer. So if we're truly looking for top performance and not a warm body, that's not enough. Oh, we lost somebody.
Wow.
Do you guys hear a lot of background noise because it's raining?
No.
No?
No,
Nope.
not
Okay,
at all.
good.
You're doing good.
So
We need the rain. All right, mistake number 2, rushing through the process. And this is a bit of a foreshadowing for the AI conversation. Tim, I do have a slide about AI. But AI is especially helpful now to rush through the process because it can quote unquote streamline the screening process, advance through the application process faster. And I believe, unfortunately, it can lead to poor decisions made faster, poor hiring decisions faster. So don't rush. In one of my favorites is over focusing on the resumes. 44% of candidates admit to lying on the resume or in the hiring process. They said there's actually 2 or 3 lies on average that's being said in a typical interview, like 45-minute interview. And there's the statistics are crazy about how much people exaggerate, invent degrees. That I mean, it's amazing. So it's been proven time and time again that relying on the resume is not going to give you the desired result. You're just not going to be able to assess if this is the person that's good. Even though, according to the resume, they did something wonderful for this company, for this team, they've achieved these amazing results. It does not mean that they will do the same thing for you. 85% of recruiters believe that candidates exaggerate skills on the resume. And as I mentioned, people invent degrees. I had a personal experience with this. I had a client, she was VP of HR, that was my primary contact. And all of a sudden she was no longer my primary contact. And I said, well, what happened? Oh, she was fired because it turns out I don't know if she even finished high school, but according to her resume, she had all these degrees and she became a VP of HR. And it took them forever to figure out what was not quite connecting, what skills were missing in that case. So Wall Street Journal thinks that 20 to 30% of people invent a degree or enhance a degree. I mean, statistics are staggering. I have Smila, my assistant, when she pulls this information. One time I printed it out and it was like a little book and it reads like a book. So anyway, the point we're making is something is, I'm not saying it's broken, it's human nature, but something is missing. What's missing is job fit. Mistake number 4, unstructured interviews. As Tim was saying, you may have a great process, you may not have a great process, great interview. People are trained to interview. People are also trained to be good interviewees. So that's not going to be a good predictor of success for you. But what's even worse is when companies don't have any process when it comes to interviews at all. And finally, our favorite topic for everyone, I think, is AI, how it's impacting hiring. And I have both mistake 5 and mistake 6, over relying on AI and avoiding AI. So, and Tim has a couple of stories to mention. You talked about the biases that are inherent with using AI in screening. So you had a couple that you came up with. I found one recently. It was Amazon, actually, that they got in trouble for using AI for screening candidates and they screened out they screened out disproportionately affected women.
Hmm.
So Tim, you had one
Yeah, I mean,
from.
there's an active class action lawsuit going on in California, going on against Workday, which Workday has become a juggernaut and the back end for a number of um, human resources tools, talent applications, HCM, the human capital management arena. So they have a number of different products that are either front end or back end of that. And so it's I don't know, well over $50 million. It's in California. You can look it up. It's still going on. Tons of people. And what it was doing is AI was discriminating by age. If
Mhm.
something was calling for a certain number of years of experience, mostly affecting people 45 years old and older. And so you can look into the details of that. So it's very real. It's going on. And, in general, you can't overtool some of this stuff. I'm a firm believer, even though people think AI is taken over, I don't think you can take out the human element. So this is a cool dichotomy that you presented here where it could be used as an enhancement mechanism to make you better at things. But when you rely on it, then there's a problem. So it's no different than prompting AI and not having the wherewithal to understand what to do with the answer or the right prompt. It's the user has to understand. So the level of intelligence needs to be that you're using a tool at a certain angle. But Forbes puts out a lot of cool stuff. It's a couple slides ago, but it attaches right to this that it's literally 50% of Gen Z is considered to blatantly lie on their resume. And so one thing for everyone to think about is we may know this and talk about it, but this is a cool thing that I also learned recently is that we're all actively engaged in self-deception. We don't actually see what's right in front of us. Our eyes are receptors. Our brain makes up a lot of our viewing fields. And you can get into the engineering and the science around all of that. So actually, they can have four different people eyewitness a situation and give completely different accounts.
Mhm.
So what does that mean with this? It's the same. You have to think about these things when you're interviewing, right? It's very hard to get five people to agree where they want to go to dinner in the same family. How do you get five interviewers to agree on a candidate sometimes? Right. So I know I'm off
Yeah.
track a little bit. I'm going to pull that back into AI there just to answer it. I know I don't want
Hmm.
to kill our time, but I promise I'll land this because it's important,
You're good.
which is they're blatant, but sometimes you put things you believe to be true. You might have been part of a team that did that, or you might exaggerate. You might even tell yourself that that is the truth. It's not like they're outright lying, like they're lying to your face. Tim, do you wear a size 20 shoe? Yes, I do. I don't wear a size 20, right? That's like a blatant, silly thing, right? You don't It's more sometimes they've even convinced themselves that they've done the thing or were part of it or that they influenced it when they really did not. So AI is massively screening out people. It is also people are using it to make their resumes and make it sound great as if the verbiage suddenly gets them through, which it is. This is the problem with these applicant tracking systems and try to systemize things. So, and then a lot of us can catch it, like school systems and other places are using other AI tools to find out that AI write this. Well, there's going to be some stuff in there pretty quickly that's showing that if it did, then people might get, take out. So the idea is to use it as a tool to help you maybe synthesize things. That's using it to a degree to maybe be more effective, shorten things, be more concise, stop being so elaborate, don't have a huge book. So that's an example of using it well. What I just ran into this week is we have people that are interviewing over video like we are right now and they're keeping the AI voice connection on and repeating questions or have the volume up so that the AI can hear the question and is spitting out the answers to help
Oh
people
my
get through technical,
goodness.
especially in technical interviews. It took two 1 hour interviews in the last question of an interview for our client to spot that it was happening. She got through us. I'm throwing us under the bus because we don't go into super deep technically. We're doing character and other stuff. And they got through like seven different people And it took one guy asking a bullshit question, and it's good because I threw a swear in here. That helps us a little bit. I curse every now and again.
Why? AI won't flag that or what?
I don't know. Someone's offended because I just swore. You can turn this off.
Gotcha.
It's good for them. I don't know. Whatever. But anyway, they just threw out a question that didn't mean anything and wasn't even part of it. And the person stumbled and then stumbled for 30 seconds and then read a PhD level answer to this technology. And then they just said, thank you for your time. And they knew. And they weren't even planning on using the technology. So, like I said, the idea of trying to trick people and ask them off the wall questions is becoming all the more important because you don't know if people coach each other, use AI, other tools to do the interview or write the resume. Using it a little bit to help you, you still have to be you. Authenticity.
That is fascinating. And I think we're only going to see more of that, all the more important to use assessments. So that's really the last mistake. It is the last mistake I wanted to mention here, is when companies don't use pre-employment assessments to assess for job fit. Because everything that we just talked about up to this point indicates that you can't rely on the interview, you can't rely on the resumes wholeheartedly. I'm not suggesting take it out. You can't really rely on AI. AI can bring more candidates to you, but then how do you decide which ones are the best fit? This is where good psychometric assessment tools can be helpful. Unfortunately, one of the mistakes companies make is they choose to use the wrong assessment for the job. The wrong assessment. It's not validated for hiring. They can get in trouble from the EEOC. Personality assessments, for example, are not valid for deployment in pre-employment situations because they do not measure what makes people productive and they do not predict performance. There's no job fit element to them. It simply puts people in buckets, which is very useful on the post-hire side, employee development, team development, personal development. So everything like DISC, Predictive Index, Myers-Briggs, all of those personality assessments are wonderful for those purposes, and they're not very useful in pre-employment. And then I've also had clients who all rely too much on the assessment. Even if they chose the right assessment, they rely on it too much. Department of Labor tells us that you are supposed to use assessment as no more than 1/3 of your hiring decision. The other two pieces, evaluating the past and evaluating the present, which is the resume and background, the past, and the present, how they interviewed, are key components of that three-legged stool. You have to gather all of the data to make the most informed decision possible. Even though this third leg of the stool predicts performance, a valid, good assessment predicts job fit, it's only 1/3 of the hiring decision. So it's what assessment you select to add to your toolbox and how you use it are key differentiators. So to review, common hiring mistakes, even smart organizations make: letting bias influence decisions, rushing through the hiring process when we need to hire a warm body, focusing too much on the resumes, interviews being unstructured, relying on AI too much, not relying on AI at all, or using the wrong assessment or not using an assessment at all. So let's talk about job fit. What I find throughout my career of 20 plus years in the assessment business, talent management, and leadership development, is that people don't fail because they can't do the job, but rather because they do not fit the job. They don't fit the company culture. They don't mesh well with the team and the manager. So the fit with the job is extremely important. Harvard Business Review keeps telling us time and time again, they conduct these studies on a regular basis, that employees who are well matched to their job are 2.5 times more productive. I actually do a lot of case studies and return on investment studies, and I find that number to be quite a bit higher. But I suppose in fairness, that depends on the industry, depends on the position. but job matching approach is the highest predictor of success on compared to all commonly accepted factors. And they, in that study that Harvard Business Review puts out, they evaluate 13 different factors, including education, experience, job training, etc. So yeah, even education cannot predict success. Even a relevant experience cannot predict success, which kind of blows people's minds because that's how we traditionally used to hire. So what is job fit? Fit with the job, fit with the team and the manager. They're comfortable with the demands of their environment. Fit with the culture. They're engaged and motivated, and they want to be on this bus. They didn't get forced on this bus in a transaction that required them to exchange time for money. They want to get to the destination this bus is going. So that means they need to be aligned with the mission and the goals of the organization, and they need to be aligned with their leadership. All of that plays into it. And it's especially important how well they match the job in terms of dealing with the demands of the position. Do they have the capacity? Job fit matters, and we have lots of statistics that we probably don't have time for. All I know is best-in-class companies consistently use high-quality assessment tools for hiring across all positions. Sometimes my prospects and clients ask me, at which level is it important to evaluate certain traits or deploy job fit assessments? I just pause, and then they answer that question themselves. At what level in the organization does integrity not matter? Work ethic, or problem-solving abilities, or decision-making, execution, all positions, and you want to implement it consistently. That's another part of this process. And yeah, what people care about, speaking of Gen Zs, Jennifer, they have different expectations. Gen Zs and millennials have younger millennials have different expectations. They want to be aligned, like I was talking about being on that bus. They want to know exactly where the bus is going. Like, doesn't matter where they're starting off, even if it's a receptionist, they want to matter, and they want to make sure that what the company does matter to them. Not all of them, but a pretty good number of them.
Almost half, looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's not something to ignore. So, and what adds to the complexity of this situation, hiring mistakes, is that people are complicated. People are the most important and yet the most unpredictable asset in your organization. They're unpredictable. Everything we talked about, interviews, whether they cheat or lie or not, they're honest. It's still, what you get is about 10% of who the person is. People are like icebergs. 90% of who they truly are is hidden below the water surface. And even when you work with somebody side by side for years, you're still only seeing about 10% of who they are. If you're really best buddies and you've been through thick and thin, maybe 15%. And my point was proven in 2020 when COVID hit. And it was like the icebergs were flipping. People were showing their true colors, including their potential. They stepped up to the plate to save the organization or to pivot. Conversely, I've also been a witness to several leaders falling to pieces publicly and spectacularly, and their executive teams were surprised. And I said, if you had an assessment on them, you would have known that they've been struggling all along. It's been hidden below the water surface. And when push comes to shove and everything hits the fan, yeah, they fell apart. They could not handle it. Because that's when people are stressed out, they're not going to try and put their best foot forward and still try to be effective despite themselves. So it's important to assess for what the person brings to the table. What is their unique DNA that's going to contribute to this job fit? What is like the box of ingredients that they were given at birth? What type of things they're going to be able to bake with it or make with it, create with it? This is why we want to look at assessments. and job fit specifically. And whether you like some of these industry leaders or not, they were successful and they do have some smart quotes about the right people. Getting the right people in the right jobs is a lot more important than developing strategy. Like I always say, people are the foundation of every business. If you have great people, they will make great companies. That's the tagline for my business for that reason. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do your job, wait until you hire an amateur. Well, play on A players versus B players or C players. How do you ensure you hire top performers, A players? And if you have the tool that can ensure that can help you cut through all those biases and the mistakes that we're wired to make as humans when we interview or review resumes, wouldn't you want to please give it a shot? Again, some more fun statistics. I told you I have a whole book of statistics on trends. That what pre-employment, good pre-employment assessment tools allow us, the hiring managers, to do is deploy data so that we make a more informed decision. Is it a better decision? Well, it's a more informed decision. 74% of companies that use assessments increase hiring efficiency because they actually don't need to have as many interviews. When we engage in job fit, we assess for fit, and then we conduct winning interviews, whether it's a panel or or small group or one-on-one, we ask the right questions. There's no reason to put candidates through 10 interviews, as my friend just had to go through for a receptionist position. 10 interviews over the course of like a month and a half. Companies that use pre-employment testing see 50% drop in hiring costs, better chance of hiring a top performer, reduced time to hire, and the biggest one is decreasing the turnover. Remember, we talked about the cost of bad hire. And what happens more often than not is these systems are so cost effective. To Tim's earlier point about hiring a professional to look for candidates, qualified candidates, and then assessing candidates, you avoid one bad hire, it pays for itself. You accelerate the hiring process of replacement, or if you're growing a team, you reduce that time from job requisition to hire, and then you make sure that you hire the right person. It pays for everything, just one person, typically. I have a couple of slides here, but I know we're running out of time, so maybe we can touch on some of the compliance-related issues related to assessments, how to choose the right tool. Not all assessments out there are valid for pre-employment. I mentioned that already. And not all reliable instruments are valid. And you, as an employer, as a hiring manager, are responsible for compliance. Also, time tests, mechanical aptitude tests, and personality tests produce adverse impact. I know some organizations really like to put their candidates through paces, put them on edge, put them through a stressful situation, and they give them 100 questions in 20 minutes, see how they react. Adverse impact. So, and there is a link I can share with everyone that comes from the Department of Labor's ONET Guide to Good Practices for HR Professionals. Don't you like how they call it? This is an updated version. Workforce Investment Professionals. I think they meant HR. I love it. So they have 13 key points about what you need to consider as you're looking for an assessment. Remember the three-legged stool and how to improve your hiring decision? That's the past, the present, and the future. And these, like I said, I'm just going to go through this. Any thoughts on everything we covered so far? Anyone want to chime in, Tim?
Yeah, I was going to add a couple of things. One is we had an old exercise we do for a long time that just kind of hit a lot of this home, where almost any job I ever take from a client, I interview and talk to them about what they're doing and what they really want to hire. I don't even pay attention to the job description. I consider that also, like you're saying, just one of the, I'd say there are many legs, but to your point, I like the three legs to the stool. Maybe those are the three main ones. How a person comes into your company or how you find them, I believe matters. How you treat the process, whether or not the interviewers know what they're doing. But on my thought is every single time I ask a client in an hour dissertation of what kind of person they want in their job, about 80 to 90% of the things they tell me, I just ask them this. I say, show me how you find that on a resume. Show me, you know what I mean? They're not anything on the job description. They're
Mm.
talking about teamwork, honesty. They really get things. I have them think on their toes. They can handle things under stress like this, or need someone that just really knows how to grow my company, kind of take things and be a self-starter and have all that. And when you read through job achievements is what I tell people to put on their resume, at least, not just regurgitate your job description on a resume. AI is going to give you buzzwords so you get picked up by an applicant tracking system.
Mm.
Sure, but that's actually not what you're. So I think job descriptions are broken, resumes are broken, but inevitably, if you could come up with what you're supposed to look for, it's a reverse engineering process, then what's the easiest way to find them? And everyone's like, well, how do I find those? By asking the questions. I'm like, well, do you even know what to do with the answers to the questions you're currently asking?
Mm.
No,
Mm.
you need to assess that. And I said this, and a client changed their mind, and they actually decided to hire me. The first instinct was not to hire me because they asked me, how come we don't have any personality tests? And I said, how many people in your company have taken a personality test? And he's like, none. And I'm like, well, what does the personality test results going to show you? Just because it says they're really friendly or really driven or whatever, does that mean it's a home run? You have no baseline for what you're comparing it to. And then to Tatiana's point, how do you know that tells you success in the future? I say to my clients, just because someone has done exactly the same job you're hiring them for and has done it with some degree of success, let's say you've done all that, that is no guarantee of future results. We know that. It's a chemistry, it's a physics
Mm.
thing. Past experience or the past is information, right? And so
Mhm.
you're basically information gathering in a couple of different criteria, and truly you're flying blind without a real tool, why you're using the tool, why you understanding the tool. And the easiest way to start this, if you're like, okay, this is a lot of information, how do I go? This is great. These are all broken. It's not like resumes and interviews are being thrown out the window. Well, what do we do differently? Just run into people at a bus stop and say, hey, you want to come work for me? Does anyone even go to a bus stop? I don't know.
I think that's happened actually before.
Well, look, I say that's one of the best. Yeah, seriously, if it might happen. Well, look, I like
Okay, there's
being
nothing wrong with picking up somebody at a bus stop as long as you put them through the assessment and then you can see, oh, so they're going to work out. There's 87% chance this person actually will work out as my top performers. They have what
yeah.
it takes.
Well, I think it's better to meet them that way than to have them come in through your applicant tracking system with which is probably a BS resume
Right.
and, with filled with lies and other things. At least you're meeting them, observing them. You're trying to observe the values you're looking for in an organic fashion. So, that's a different webinar for a different day. But, the reality of it is without understanding your tool set, you actually, I would say you don't have process. Your process, look, it's been around my entire life. I've done it half my life and have made a good living just telling people that resumes and interviews don't work. Here's why. And all I'm doing is pulling one or two of those threads. What Tatiana's talking about here is how you really do it yourself if you yourself have taken the time to understand it. And it's crazy because if you are spending $100,000 on something in your own personal, I don't care how much money you have, if you're making, when you invest in your home to buy, right? You go through a lot of due diligence. You look in every room in the house, you compare it to others, you get a realtor's opinion, you sometimes ask your friends, you check out the neighborhood, do they have good schools? I mean, I can go on and on. What's the tax situation looks like? Oh my God, what's the traffic coming out of here? Do I have a driveway? How many things do I have to fix? Yet you're buying $100,000 person in your company, or three of them to run your company, or three executives. That's like you buying a home, and all you do is have five different people who you don't even agree together on, interview them. You take what their resume says to your VP of HR situation when they've lied on a key data point. And then suddenly you're like, oh, this is our person. And 2 years later, you wonder why you're underwhelmed, your company's underperforming, and you haven't gotten where you needed to go. It's because you don't have a process. You don't know what you're doing. You need professional help. And I don't know if that's a sales pitch, but it's not meant to be. But going it alone goes back to your tribe thing. You know, you need a tribe of people that know what they're doing and outsource what you don't know. And so if you get anything out of this, you yourself on the applicant side, you know, maybe assess yourself. Call Tatiana and say, can I take your test? You know, I want to know who I am. Tatiana, I don't mean to offer that up, you know, but it's just an idea.
Yes, actually, as I said, it's a friendly group of people. So, Tim, you
I'm
still
taking
need
it.
to
I'm taking it
finish.
after this. I'm taking
Still
it
need to
after this
finish it.
meeting. Yes.
So this was just one of the assessment tools that we ran out of time. But I really, my main goal today was to build awareness around those hiring mistakes. Show you statistics because I just find them fascinating. That it's not just in my head. It's sort of a self-validation process too. Um, and encourage all of you, and hopefully when you go out and talk to people, encourage hiring managers to think bigger, not just how we've always done things. What are the resources that are available to me to make a better decision? No, it's not par for the course to have poor hires. It's not a job. It's just the burden of the leader to manage poor performance, or toxic people. We've all hired people who are extremely good technically, they're savvy, but they're just murder on team morale. No, no, you don't need to be dealing with any of this. And this is not Pollyanna thinking. It's the truth. When you have the right people in the right positions, it's a win-win-win-win across the board for everyone, from the employee to the customer to every team member, because winners want to be on a winning team. I've never met anybody who was fully engaged in losing. Think about it. Nobody wants to be fully engaged in losing. So yeah, build a winning team. You have the tools, you have strategies, you have processes, a wealth of information, and experts that can help. What other questions or comments from the team?
I think this has been phenomenal. I'm so glad you're recording it because and I was taking notes um because you've given me great bullet points to open up the conversation. I mean, it makes so much sense the way you present it, how you do. And I love the analogies. I love the statistics. Um and so I'm better equipped to go out and kind of dig deeper when I find a need. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
look, I think one of the best things to do just out and talking to people in general for anybody where it's advantageous is being curious. You know, hey, you know, you could walk around and say hiring is broken, don't you think? Hey, what do you guys think? How do you hire in there? It's crazy nowadays, right? No different than when you shoot shit about the weather or real estate market or
Yeah,
the
that's
economy or
good.
politics, right? If you have some passion in this place and look, it behooves you in your network. If you're looking for a job or if you're not, if you're gainfully employed, this is three things I like to tell people. One, we're all permanently temporary. Everything in
Mm.
the world is temporary. Nothing here is built to last. Every single thing you see on earth is going to die. I know it's sad and scary. Same thing with your company. Not everyone is permanently attached to your company. They could be happy, love their boss, and making great money. And you know what? They get a call from me. And then they find out that they're grossly underpaid. And then they suddenly say, maybe my boss isn't that nice to me. Maybe I am doing this. Maybe I am doing that. Or I don't know what's next for me. And if I hit them before their internal clock tells them, most of the time people are getting people that have already figured out, to Tatiana's, they've had enough stress, or maybe there's a cataclysmic event like COVID that makes them make a change. So they don't usually, most people move towards, like Tony Robbins tells you, either towards pain, towards pleasure and away from pain, right? And they might move themselves in between. But we have a world filled with mediocrity for these reasons. And
Yeah,
again, I can,
I'll say I just came back from our company-wide event out in Houston, and this is where all the big perform the $1 million club and everything, they're walking the stage, and one of the bigwigs kind of under his breath to the side in one of our break, he said, they could be walking the stage at the $10 million club today and tomorrow be working at McDonald's. Like, there's no, you're right. Things always change. You just never know.
yeah. So keeping that conversation going and open, and then saying, hey, there might be a better way. And look, I always say you should be working on your network and these type of things all the time, because knowing that you want to be the right fit in a company and you want your teammates to be the right fit so the company can be successful is a responsibility of your career. So this isn't just HR people need to hear this, or business owners like myself or whatever need to hear this. I think everyone needs to walk around with this on their shoulder, because then when each person takes a little modicum of responsibility for their role in their career and their role for, look, I tell people one of the best ways to interview is to turn the interview around. That's great. You guys have decided that I'm a good candidate and you put me through all these paces and stress. Why the hell do I want to work for you? Now it's your turn. Now let me interview you. Because if you're going to get a talent like me, you better have an answer to a whole list of questions. And suddenly you're in a power position. Look, I got one of the best salary offers I've ever gotten in my career, because I said, hey, this is a wonderful, I love all these things. This is great. I like you. I've enjoyed this. You can't afford me. And the guy's like, pounds the desk. What do you mean I can't afford you? I'm like, we just spent 4 hours together. It doesn't make sense for you to pay me what I make right now because I'm a high performing salesperson. You're not going to pay me what my company pays me. I have equity in the company. I have this. So this is all well and good. What are we going to do about it? And then he got out his pad and he started making moves and doing everything else and threw out a ridiculous offer that I was like, oh, I guess you can't afford me. So you never know. I'm obviously not there anymore, though, because he shouldn't have done that. It wasn't a smart move, and ultimately that. But look, my point is it's a two-way street. So if you take some modicum of responsibility for it and be like, look, if you're a low-level manager, you're ready to go to supervisor, we need to know what our people are and who they're good at, and how come we don't know that? Yeah, Myers-Briggs is one thing. It's dated for a reason, and all these other ones are super complicated. So I love that, Tatiana, you and your group have come up with something. I can't wait to take it afterward.
Mhm.
I think we need to have more enhanced discussions, because my next comment's going to be, what are you doing? And saying, hey, before we do anything, um, you should probably add this to your mix. And it's not just the only thing. I'm assuming there's training on the how, because
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're talking about. It's not anything to just suddenly grab an assessment. Point is, why do you have the assessment? What are you going to do with it? And then you still need to tweak the other two things. There's three legs to the stool. So Tatiana is the best person to help you with how the assessment stuff works, because she's a subject matter expert on those. I can help you with one or two of the other ones. Or if you want to take a shortcut and just say, hey, I want to skip this process, not precluding the assessments. That's what great headhunters and great referral partners can do for your company. The best hires are referred to you. If me and Greg and Tatiana and Jennifer work together, and Jennifer leaves and goes somewhere else and we start a new company, Greg might be like, we need to get Jennifer Clements on our team. And I'm like, yeah, I remember her. And we interview her, we talk to her again. Those are the best hires. Someone you've worked with before, that you've known, you've validated, you sat with before, and say, hey, look what we're doing. Come along. There's so many stories of partners coming together that way, right? So anyway, I don't know if there's like a clock on LinkedIn where suddenly we're going to get shut off, but I can talk all day. If anyone wants to stay here till midnight, I might get a snack. I
I
might
just
go off
wanted
camera. We can keep going.
I just wanted to give Greg a moment. You unmuted yourself, Greg. Did you have something to say?
Yeah. I was just gonna say that uh, I did take the assessment and it's very, very helpful. And my team took it, and yeah, getting that baseline. So has just helped me. I'm going slow. To your point, Tim, yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a huge investment here. So, I want to find the right person. And, but in the interviewing and the resumes, I've learned from past mistakes that I don't know what I'm doing. So I am trying to figure it out. And so this has all been very helpful, to just kind of put it in a broader context and to be able to see the potential pitfalls that I run into. The bias was very helpful, and to be on the lookout for that. So I found this very, very insightful. Appreciate you guys taking the time to do it. And
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much
I'd like you
for
for
spending
adding
the
that.
time.
Yeah.
yeah,
I always say
So,
this to folks, like, look, I think this is one quick thing. You don't know what you don't. There's the four stages of learning: unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, and then, so the unconscious incompetence, you don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
Unconscious competence is you have to think to do the thing, right? And then conscious competence is you're good at it now, you know you can do it, but you have to think about it, right? And then unconscious competence is where you're on autopilot. That's the four stages you go. You think about it like, hey, you didn't know you needed to tie your shoe until your parents probably told you tripped over your shoelace. Now you know, and then you had to like cross the it over. You follow the bunny rabbit, stick the bunny rabbit or the fox through the hole. I have kids and I still don't know how you're supposed to teach them how to tie their shoes, right? And then, in the third stage, you're like, oh, I can think about it. Now my 8-year-old can kind of do it because he's learned, but he's got to think about it. You can't talk to him at the same time. I could tie my shoe, chew gum, have a conversation, and think about what I have to do in 5 minutes now because I'm unconsciously competent in several things at once. So, Greg, I applaud you because moving out of this, I really don't know what I don't know. And now I got to kind of learn why I don't know what I don't know about these things I've taken so wholeheartedly for granted, which is that resumes and interviews are how you hire people, right? And
yeah,
so I
yeah.
applaud you because that is a massive step, right? And
Appreciate
so
it.
it's the baseline of all wisdom of anything. It's like, hey, you
Yeah,
only get smarter by learning more about what you don't know. And it's crazy. The more you figure that out, the more you realize how little you know about many things.
yeah, that's right. No, very good. No, you guys are very good at what you're doing. I appreciate it. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much.
so let's wrap it up and uh, hope to see you guys on the next webinar. We will send
Yeah,
information. Tim and I will continue the conversation. Tim, thank you so much for
yeah,
Thank you.
participating. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. It was great to see you both.
Thank you
Yeah.
all for
yeah.
coming
And
too
Greg
You
and
and
Jennifer.
supporting. Yes,
Yes,
Yep.
take
You
care.
bet.
thank
Have a
you.
good night, guys.
Thank you.
you
You
appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
guys
Good
have a good
night.
Bye.
night.
Bye.
All right, bye.